Mama Africa.
Watoto wanalia, abana bakawa.
Okay, Caroline, could you kindly give us your opinion on the bill, the homosexual bill? Thank you.
What I think about the homosexual bill is that the way Uganda has taken it on a cultural perspective, and it is what they know. Now, in our cultures as Africans, it is wrong for a man and a man to be together.
A woman and a woman.
And also a woman and a woman. Yes. Having said that, we don't need to dehumanize them or end someone's life. It is not your responsibility. It is not your responsibility. There should be reasonable knowledge that we can gather to solve the situation. That is what I think about the gay and lesbian bill.
But when you say to solve the situation, do you mean solve the situation how? As in to stop, to stop people who are against it?
No,
killing?
Absolutely not. Because everyone is entitled to their right, but it's how you use it. What I think is, it doesn't, and this doesn't matter your religious perception, and or how you take it. But I know that there was once a man who said that whoever has no sin cast the first stone. And there was a prostitute that they brought to him, and everybody started descending. Who's here without no sin? I mean, it depends on what you think what sin is. But it doesn't mean that you should oppress a human life or dehumanize a human life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that. Thank you.
This is what I think.
Personally, I would like to say that, picking up on what Caroline said, we are very much dictated by our cultural beliefs, values, and behavior. As Ugandans, we are very conservative, and we don't take change very easily. The whole aspect of this entire bill and how it came to be is about, somehow miseducating people to be people. If you look at our society, people get on with their own business, as a matter of fact, day in, day out. However, there has been some element of Western intervention specifically around this issue. We have evangelist churches, preaching, we've seen, I'm sure you've all seen that YouTube clip, the priest, So we got to a situation where money was being pumped into Uganda. We've already ascertained we're dependent on Western culture, and Western money and aid.
Yeah.
But then this whole topic blew out of proportion, where money was being pumped into the wrong channels. And the homosexuality bill is one of those elements where Western money was being pumped into poor people to oppose something that they didn't even know about.
Exactly.
We have situations for example, in America, where you have the failed, evangelical churches I'm talking about. They failed to change Congress, for something they believe is vile and it doesn't work. So instead, they diverted their resources to developing countries, and in the process, they have turned people against people. This is not something that is new. It's been there from time and time ago, but the way it's being handled and it's being fueled is what's turning, our parliament to enact such a bill that is very destructive, to people. This is not a new topic. It's the way it's being managed that is the wrong way. Like you rightly say, Jonathan, it has been reversed in some aspects, but the debate goes on.
Definitely. Thank you for your contribution. Mr. William?
Well, thank you. I suppose most of the members of the panel here, actually all of you, I'm older than you. And homosexuality as an issue in our communities has never been an issue.
Yeah.
I can tell you I grew up not knowing that there's such a thing as homosexuality. There is a saying in the language you speak in Uganda, enkoko kokulima. For boys, when you start to wake up wet, you go for them, for the girls. Okay. I suppose that is what it is. I've got some issues with some aspects of homosexuality in the African context. And issues of why legalize people who have been actually trained or formulated to practice that sexual orientation. True or not true, to some ears, we know that some young boys in certain schools, certain religious institutions were victims as they grow up. So who is you to stand up and victimize people who are already victims? We know that practices and mannerism can be learned or can be enforced through bullying. Someone can bully you that you are that, you're ugly, you're ugly, you're ugly. You start to feel, actually, I'm ugly, I'm ugly, I'm ugly, I'm ugly. What happens? Self-esteem goes out of the window. Likewise, the issue of homosexuality in Uganda, we have a big number. You'll be surprised that most of these people are victims. They have grown up being trained to be, not naturally. So if they're victims, but they've turned out to be responsible human beings and citizens of the state, with massive contribution to the development of the state and to the healing of others, without victimizing others, then we need to think again and start to categorize. I don't think the bill actually addressed categories.
No, not at all.
I think I've heard of one reverend from the Catholic Church who was thrown out. He stood up and said the truth. The truth. What I'm basically just saying, that some people became to be orientated sexually because of the form of training they went through. Either they wanted it or not, but it happened. So, may Almighty God come upon us and give us sense and wisdom, not to be the judges of this world.
Yes, absolutely.
But give us wisdom to be men and women of wisdom, to be fair, to be real, and to understand and respect the priceless gift of love from God, life. Don't take it when you did not give it.
Thank you very much. That's good.
I must admit, I agree with everything that you've said. I can't oppose that, although there are people who feel really, really strongly about homosexuality, and especially, some people who are quite religious, that it's wrong, it's a sin, and you know, people are going to go to hell for this type of sin. You know, how easy is it to change people's mindsets? It's been going on for years and thousands of years.
I think, you know, if we want to understand, you know, the topic of homosexuality in Uganda, is try to pick at the core of it. People in Uganda just do not adhere to the idea at all. You just have to look at our musicians. You know, Bobby Wine was supposed to come and perform in UK, but because of a song he released, you know, in support of the anti-gay ideology, you know, he wasn't granted a visa. Now, these are, you know, supposed to be our role models, or at least role models for the upcoming generation. And, you know, they preach hate on TV, on radio. You know, how are people supposed to move on if the people they idealize are busy preaching hate?
Can I say something? This is where the African community is very vulnerable. Yeah? To people who are powerful. People who can dangle cheese in their face. They go for the cheese not knowing that where they're standing there's a hole. So they jump to get the cheese down into the hole. Yeah? We are very vulnerable. So you dangle some money to fight you, it doesn't cost me now time. Yeah? So basically, there's some unfair game on all sides of the continents. The south, the west, and the north. Why should people invest in teaching ways of life? Every society in this world was given by the Lord their ways of life. Quite rightly, I grew up not knowing that there's such a way of life as man for man, woman for man. If it was happening, I didn't know, I didn't see.
I blame the media.
Yeah. So,
because, you know, you idolize certain aspects of things, and if something sells, you print it more and more and more. And that's exactly what's happening in Uganda. You know, this reality TV lifestyle, you know, what sells, the media picks up on it and they just milk it.
So we as professionals or opinion makers, yeah, we need to stand up tall and educate our people, but also to educate our leaders where possible. Yeah. Our duty, all of you here, you are policy makers, and our duty is not to policy lead, but to policy make through airing views like these ones.
Yes.
Yeah. So the vulnerability of the African community, the vulnerability of African continents through the medium of dependency needs to be addressed. Our people are fighting each other because of someone's different war seated somewhere far away to tackle something which is very controversial in that community, which is not part of their ways of life. We need to be mindful. Aid with strings, we should reject that aid.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, there's a reason why the parliament and a few other people supported the enactment of that bill or that law. I think there's a reason for it. It might be political, it might be cultural, but one thing for sure is that there is an element of cultural beliefs that are always incorporated in any law that a government or a society enforces. So I believe that this homosexual bill that was passed did also incorporate elements of cultural beliefs. Now, my issue sometimes is the way we sometimes get involved into other countries' issues from here. as the UK, we tend to really nose in and get involved in their issues, and sometimes we come out, the winners. Sometimes it affects the economy. Sometimes it affects different people. But I think it's something just to be aware. For me, it's something I need to learn and explore more about. Yeah, but definitely tide aid is something we need to really discuss. I think another day. That is a very, very good point that we can discuss and extend further another day. Tide aid, the issue of tide aid.
But the tide aid is actually very, very true. When this bill was even being proposed and debated on in the Ugandan parliament, a lot of foreign donors to Uganda's economy cut aid to Uganda. And it's only this year some of them have come back, Sweden being the latest example. They've started giving aid back to Uganda because of this change in that actual bill. This recent, watering down of the bill. A lot of external donors, we've already ascertained we're dependent on external aid. They cut it as a result of just this one law.
Dependency syndrome. It's a dependency syndrome, and it's a question where we lie and where people want to be. So this is where I was saying that you actually, it's from that bill you learn a lot about where Africa lies in the world, maybe Uganda in particular, where you lie in the world, and what do you mean to the rest of the world. Because if visas are not given because you sang a song with your opinion about something, and the interpretation of it is inciting hate.
Yeah.
Again, that's quite interesting to explore. If a country is going to stop giving aid, then you've got to think about that because of that bill. MPs represent people, don't they? And maybe Sweden and the countries that actually try to stop the bill should try to educate those leaders first, because those leaders represent their people, so they bring the opinions of their people. Perhaps, maybe. Do you think it's something we could have a referendum on? I don't know.
Well, you make a really good and interesting point there. What I keep thinking about when we're having this discussion is, why was the bill put on the table? What was going on in Uganda that pushed Parliament to bring this bill forward? What has been happening on the ground? There must be some situations, some stories that are going on that we're not, the public is probably not aware of, for them to have really gotten up after all these years. Have they passed this kind of bill before? No. There's a reason why this bill was suddenly brought up, and they want to do something about it, because something has been going on for a long time, and the government, whoever has approached them and said, right, you need to do something. I mean, I heard a story about a cult situation where you have people who are going out as a cult, and they are having they are
promoting.
Not just promoting it, basically they are initiating it to children.
Yes.
This is what I heard. I don't know how true it is, but I heard that there is a cult of people who are going around and they've been influenced by other cults from the West.
Yes.
Because as you know,
yes.
For example, if you have, in the West they've been dealing with so many things like pedophilia and all these kind of things. When it happens in the West, they have a system where they can deal with these issues, even though they don't deal with everything. Now, in Africa, people are still very, very vulnerable. So, for example, if you have somebody who comes from the West and they have a bit of money and they say, right, we're going to open up a home and take children off the street because, we've got the resources to do it. Nobody's going to argue with that, So they open up this home, but what takes place in that home? Do we know? Do we know? Are there people who come? I mean, like, for example, here, you might have a group, an organization like Ofsted, who will come into schools and they investigate and find out what is this and what is that. And if there's complaints, and there's more than one complaint, they will do something about it. but there's loads of organizations at home who are still very vulnerable because they don't have bodies that will come and find out what is taking place in certain homes. Now, I've heard stories about people, cults, and certain individuals who have power and money who are initiating homosexuality to young people, like you were saying, and those young people have become victims of this. And somehow the brain, when they grow up, interprets this in such a way that what they were victims of has now become something that they desire, which is a different scientific issue that we also need to look at, But who are these cults? Do you understand what I'm saying? So there must have been something going on the ground for them to bring this up. And this bill wasn't just because they want to victimize people who are homosexual, and that needs to be looked at. They brought this bill because they're also trying to protect people who are vulnerable.
That's a very good point.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we need to, that's something that people need to really understand as well.
I think one of the other aspects of this is it's become, like you say, cult. Yes, there has been a situation where Uganda is a poor country. People are poor, and they will do anything, to survive. And one situation comes to mind. There's a prominent person who's on a run from Uganda because they actually infiltrated the entire national football team.
Goodness gracious.
And I'll leave it at that.
Right.
So
guys,
just mention that name.
Yeah.
So,
but this is what we're talking about. The other thing that we really have to look at when we're talking about people who are vulnerable, sometimes, this bill is I'm not saying that I'm in favor of people going out and taking lives or doing all sorts of ills to people who are this way inclined. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying they are young people who are very vulnerable, and if we don't have something in place that protects these young people, the number of homosexual people is going to continue to rise. Because if they cannot stop these cults, for example, that come in and they initiate these things to young boys and young girls, it's going to continue. Because if we want to follow the West, for example, and say, oh, no, we can't have this bill, let's end it right now, blah, blah. There's things that are going to be ignored.
If I may add to what you're saying, right, looking at it on a forensic or psychological perspective, as you said, there is different typologies in investigations of a serial murder, a sadistic, and a rapist. If this is brought forward that this person has committed a homosexual crime, then let's let the country, as Uganda, have a systematic sort of bill put in place that if you've done that, if you've molested a child sexually, or if you've initiated yourself to do certain things that are homosexual, that are not right to another human being without their consent, right? They should be dealt with appropriately as the law stands at that point. Instead of
Having
dehumanizing a choice that an individual has made. Yeah? And maybe that could sort of resolve to a certain degree what would be going on.
Of course.
Can
So
I-
yeah.
May I add one clinical perspective to this issue? My experience working in mental health, acute services, and different forms of practice, areas of practice. Suicide, and this is very anecdotal, or people who tend to self-harm are people who have been molested sexually. Yeah? Who end up actually sometimes killing themselves.
Absolutely.
If it is true that some people have been recruiting and have invested in recruiting young kids without their consent, or by giving them sweets and some other materials to buy their sex, it is evil.
Yes.
Evil.
Because that person when that person grows, it grows up as a confused person, a
Absolutely.
very angry person, and that anger sometimes is expressed towards themselves by harming themselves repetitively,
Yeah.
or they can turn that anger outside and
do it to us.
to others. So we're talking about a big issue here. And I think credit to the law-making system of Uganda that they decided to say, listen, let's put it on the table.
Yes.
Enough
Yeah?
is enough.
And then explore the pros and cons.
Yes.
I cannot sit here and say for certain that I'm knowledgeable about the processes which went on. I am only here, I can only stand here and say we have to be mindful not to victimize the victim.
Yeah.
But also we have to be mindful to put things in place to prevent
Yes.
other victims.
More victims, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you very much for your contribution, everybody. I think we're going to wrap this
Wake up, Mama Africa.
Watoto wanalia, abana bakawa.